All right, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and I've got with me today the Market Mobster. Thank you very much for being here. Welcome. And do you want to say hello?
Hi everyone. Appreciate you having me on. Really, I mean, it's been a long time coming. I mean, I think every person in my community has been saying, "Are you going to do anything with Camel anytime soon?" Yeah, we'll get there. We're here now.
Awesome. I want to take this opportunity to say thank you as well because you shouted my channel out when I was only at about 5k subs, and then it skyrocketed to about 15k within a couple of months thereafter. So I never got the opportunity to thank you in person. So thank you for that.
I appreciate it. No worries.
What are your views on the markets at the moment? Are you bullish? Are you bearish? I want to talk about altcoins at some point. And yeah, how are you finding being a YouTuber? How are you finding the market at the moment?
I think the market's interesting. It feels like all of a sudden that uncertainty's just lifted. It's kind of went, I wouldn't say back to normal, but kind of returning back to normality. But the one thing that is really interesting, I think a lot of this has caught people off guard. There's been a lot of people publicly de-risking. A lot of people got a bit spooked by it. And you could talk about the liquidity tap turning on a little bit more and interest is rising. And I'm seeing now the sentiment slowly getting bullish, but not bullish enough to get really, really turned on by it. But I just think it's weird. It's like the market sentiment, and I think fatigue has kicked a lot of people's asses over the last 2 or 3 years, and they don't trust it anymore, or they're taking profits too early, and they're like, "Oh, what do I do?" Or not being convinced by it to buy the dip, buy the lows, and I just find it. I don't know. I just find my head banging against the wall consistently with the YouTube comments. You've probably seen it. I've seen your post actually about YouTube comments. God, some of the people there are ridiculous, but it's just the way it is. I mean, this is a financial market. It happens all the time, and the longer you're in it, the longer you know. But certainly with sentiment and that sentiment side of YouTube and X comments and stuff, you kind of know where you're at, and it's a bit of an edge, I think, certainly for me. But yeah, it's looking tasty. I mean, altcoin is certainly starting to ramp up a little bit. Not so much a full blown alt season, but I think it is like a bounce, and we needed that bounce, and it kind of gets people interested again. And yeah, Bitcoin could go. Bitcoin's like a 6-year-old. It just does what it wants when it wants, and it doesn't care about certain things. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. It's one of those things, and it's like I think it catches people out. And the fact that we've done like what a 30, I think I calculated a 33-day recovery from the $74,000 low to like back up to 100k. I was thinking, wow, what a market! We're used to it, but some people aren't. It's just how people program themselves. I think a lot of people de-risked at the wrong time, personally.
Yeah, I absolutely agree, to be honest. But I think the difficult thing with Bitcoin, and again, there's no substitute for experience, and but the real difficult thing with it is the volatility, and you've got to be able to have a certain degree of experience to be able to stay on the trend because it throws those sort of 30 or 40% pullbacks. I don't think we've even seen a 40% one this time. I think 33 was the biggest.
Yeah,
But it throws these big shakeouts and it tends to do all of its pumping and then kind of consolidate and bore everyone to death and make them think it's over. And I think a lot of people fall into the trap of treating it like the stock market or some other commodity where that kind of price action would usually mark tops or would at least justify taking some off and de-risking. But in Bitcoin, you kind of have to be this psychopathic holder that's willing to just sit there and watch the account value swing up and down wildly. Because if you're trying to get out every time there's a 20% pullback or a 15% pullback, then especially in the UK, as I'm sure you know, the tax here for trade and spot is through the roof with the capital gains. And yeah, if you're going to treat it like a normal asset and de-risk, then you're just going to not be able to stay on the trend. So I think the people that have been here for a cycle or two or even three, I think they're totally used to it and they just kind of sit back and let it play. But obviously, if you're newer to the space, and I think a lot of people are also so new that they've never traded a stock or a commodity before, they just come straight into crypto, which is like the definition of throwing yourself in the deep end with a bunch of sharks, you know. So I think I think it's really it's really difficult to deal with even for the experienced guys, but for the newer guys, man, I think it's been really tough. And the funny thing is, like I said, we haven't had the volatility we had in the prior cycles, right? I mean, 30-40% pullbacks were the norm for the prior two cycles, and for most of the run up, we only got 20%. So it's actually been kind of easier to sit through than the prior ones. And also, I think it's been easier to sit through because there's more institutional adoption. It's more sort of verified now, right? There's like strategic reserve ideas and institutions buying it and spot ETFs and all this kind of thing. So I think it's easier now to look at that and say, well, it's probably not going anywhere. But going back a couple of cycles, it was I think it was a lot harder.
It was. I mean, I think I do a thing on my Patreon called MMQ. It's kind of like a bit of a piss take on Prime Minister questions. It's on a Wednesday as well, funny enough. And a lot of people do ask about the past, and I think people think that I'm talking stupidness about waking up in the morning at 3 o'clock and seeing 30% of your portfolio just diminish in the Asian session. It did happen. And you look back at the charts and you think, woof, what happened there? And it doesn't look like much because you're only going from, say, 8,000 down to 5,000. But that's in like a 2-3 candle period. And it's like, whoa, your net worth is just diminished. And it is this same thing. And you're right about the element that Bitcoin is easy. And people like look at me going, but I don't want to buy Bitcoin because I'm not going to make any money. But then I always go, but you're probably going to keep it. Like most people want to just go into altcoins to get the wealth and the quick riches. And don't get me wrong, I made a lot of money on altcoins, but I've changed. I'm getting older, I've got kids, all that kind of stuff. I don't want to be gambling on altcoins. I want to kind of preserve my wealth, and I use altcoins to trade them to then buy more Bitcoin in the future, whatever. But the reality is, people are like, I don't want to buy Bitcoin, I want to make money. But the reality is, you're talking about, oh, it's been easy for Bitcoin. For altcoins, it's been the totally opposite. It's just diminished, died. It's just, you might as well just not put, it's like putting water in a bath with no plug in it. It's just, they're not holding up at all. There's little bits of bounces or a bit of hype for some, but it's very few and far between. Then you've got the argument of liquidity. How many coins are going to pump if there's a big alt season or if there's a big run on Bitcoin? It's like people just can't quite compute the fact that it's different in the stock market. I started in 2015 in the stock market. I then bought Bitcoin in 2016. Absolute mental idea, but it worked out very, very well. All my friends didn't think I was wired up correctly, but it worked out very well for me. But I think people always go backwards and think, well, I want to do that. But I always say to people, well, in 10 years' time, what do you reckon Bitcoin's worth? It might be worth a hell of a lot more than it is today. And you've got to trust the whole process of time, which is invest in the stock market. Time is key. But with altcoins, it's not, you've got to get the established ones, and ultimately they're still unproven. So is Bitcoin in certain elements around recessions and stuff. We don't know what's going to happen, but I'd rather bet on Bitcoin than bet on, say, a random vaporwave project that's been created out of someone's back living room somewhere in Nevada, for example.
Yeah, I agree. I often say on my channel, do the basics right. And I think
Yeah.
if you've got a good Bitcoin stack, or you've got, everything's relative, but if you've put some money into Bitcoin and you got in at a reasonable time, or you're willing to hold it long enough, then after you've built that nest egg, I think then you could maybe consider taking some money into the more speculative stuff. But I come from a penny stock trading background. Those were the first things I ever traded, and I traded them for a good number of years before I decided the volatility was too much. But those things, they would pump and dump 2, 3, 400% sometimes. And I would think that was absolutely insane. And then fast forward to today, and I see people that don't seem to get out of bed for less than 20x. And I just think
Oh, no.
it's absolutely crazy to me.
Yeah, I agree. There's a lot of people that have got stupid expectations, and like I do like a dollar cost average challenge, and I started it in September, and it's $250 per week every Sunday. It'll do a Bitcoin buy. I'm up like 44%, and that was from September. Navigating the hard part of the market just with Bitcoin and a couple of Bitcoin runes for a laugh, and people are like, oh, well, that's not very good. I'm like, hold on a minute. If you bought any altcoin, you probably would be down right now. Or if you like, even on stocks, realistically, like probably be down because a lot of them have taken a bit of a hit over the tariff debacle. And I'm thinking to myself, some people are just not happy. Like 40% return in a 6-month period is pretty freaking impressive. And I think people just forget. And I think people look at old videos of like altcoins going mental, or the past of Bitcoin going from, say, I don't know, $800 to 20,000, and then 20,000 up to 60, whatever. And they just think it's going to automatically happen. But yeah, I think, you know, riches and wealth and investing, it isn't easy. It's like it takes time, and you've got to be good at it. Like if that was the case, everyone would be rich in a way. It's like property investing; it just doesn't happen overnight. It's got to mature. You got to get used to it, and yeah, the volatility is crazy. And I love the fact of the arguments with MicroStrategy of like, oh, they've created volatility just to kind of make it move, which makes sense. But I just look at that and I think, I wouldn't want to put loads of fiat money or my ISA capital into it because I think it'll be far too risky. It could literally fall off a cliff at any point, and that's, for me, too far.
Yeah, I agree. The MicroStrategy one's interesting. If it can survive the bear market and not go to zero, then out of the next 4 year cycle low, I think it will be a phenomenal trade. But I took most of my position. Well, I took all of my position off. In fact, once it was going vertical to around $500 ish, and I did add a bit back, but no way near the amount that I had initially. But it's funny because that same theme applies to those crypto stocks as well. I tend to stay away from the altcoins, as I think you know, but I like the crypto mining stocks instead. And the funny thing about those is I had a lot of the members complaining and saying things like, well, they've really underperformed and they're doing really, really bad. But even the ones that have done the worst, if you measure them from the 4 year cycle low, Bitcoin's bottom, up to even when they've crashed recently, that some of them went down 60-70%. But even from the start of this cycle to that lowest point, they're doing 250%. And I'm thinking this is like a decade or more's worth of stock market performance in 2.5 years. So even that, I think, I know it's not the performance people wanted. I know it's not the 17, well, I think MicroStrategy did 35x from all the way from the bottom to top. I know it's not that, but it's still massively outperforming the stock market. And I just think I think everyone kind of wants to buy this lottery ticket, which is kind of a strange place to be. But with that said, I actually, although I've been extremely bearish altcoins and kind of mocked them the whole way through, I finally think if we're going to see them go, we might be in that window to see it happen soon.
I agree. I mean, I can say the same thing about the miners stock. I think a lot of people are disappointed, but you look at the past and you think, wow, you can't just repeat that all the time. And I think one of the best players might actually just be the index. Is it the blockchain wisdom tree ETF, which is probably the easiest one to get in, which is a nest egg of everything. But the reality is the volatility is still there as well. And yeah, altcoins are very cyclical, but if you can understand the risk on, risk off with the stable currencies, which is all about the dominance and when the existing money is coming back into the market, you can kind of ride the trends pretty easily. But a lot of people are getting really triggered on my YouTube channel because I was talking about, oh, look, this is coming down. This is really good for risk on assets. And it's like, no, it's not. Fuck off. Shut up. Go away. I'm like, all right, then. 3 weeks later, everyone's like, yeah, you were right about that. I was like, well, yeah, because existing liquidity has got to go from stable currency dominance into the market. It's got to go from stables into it. It's like sideline onto the risk on. And all of a sudden you're seeing altcoins bounce a little bit because money's returning. And when you got that low liquidity sort of vibe of people are dead and buried and there's a bit of a gap, it's going to shoot a little bit of a shoot. And it's like, oh, hello. Like Sui's done really well recently. Obviously, Ethereum's bounced. And that's a reality. People like get that battered by it. And it's the same with the stock market. Like, there's only so much you can take until someone steps in, and then all of a sudden it's like it changes the whole narrative very, very quickly. Then in crypto, it's like everyone gets too bullish too quickly and too bearish too quickly. Then it runs for longer than you think, and that's where people get destroyed. But it's just the way it is, isn't it? It's just crypto. I still think it's a very immature market, but it might change. I don't know. Not sure about altcoins yet, though. I think people are still nesting their bag holding hands forever, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Do you have any thoughts on Bitcoin dominance? Is that something you track very closely?
My opinion on Bitcoin dominance is it's great in a way, but don't use it individually. I think a lot of people look at it as an individual element, but for me, the bread and butter for me is always a stable currency dominance first, because you need to see when money's coming back into the market. Then you need to also look at the total three/BTC pairs to see if the overall market, that index, is actually being outperforming Bitcoin, so to speak. And that isn't really doing it just yet, but normally it doesn't take long for it to start to ramp. But then usually when that goes parabolic, it's usually like the ending sort of situation. Not so much the end, but like it's kind of like don't be a hero, don't be stupid because you probably missed the opportunity to buy. But normally for me, I look at the stable currency dominance more than the Bitcoin dominance. The Bitcoin dominance, don't get me wrong, is great, but what if Bitcoin leads still, and you might not even get, like, a lot of people are talking, oh, we're going to go down to 40% dominance, 35% dominance. It's like, we might not. It's very institutional led, and even if we get down to 50%, people will be begging for more, and they'll probably get destroyed, even though they'll probably realize a lot of gains in some trades. But they'll want more because they'll always compare back. But if we are getting a lot of volume, which we are, I think the ETF now and Bitcoin's gone past its highs again, people are still buying the ETF and people are still looking at Bitcoin, especially the big money. But the new money isn't in here yet. Well, retail money, so to speak. So it just depends what the retail does. I think it'll depend mainly on Solana, Ethereum, probably XRP as well, for how that dominance changes. But I don't know if people trust the lower cap coins nowadays. I think everyone just likes to refer to meme coins and go on the casino versus the exciting, disruptive, startup, which what it was back in the day in 2017, 2018, or even 2021. I think those days are kind of maybe dying off, because I think as well, we go back to that sort of time period, retail investors could actually get in them, but now we can't. It's all these angel investors who are literally destroying the market anyways in a certain way, because they're just diluting their coins on the market when it's low liquidity, and then they wonder why they go down 98%. That's probably why.
Yeah. Yeah, the whole altcoin thing has been fascinating for me to watch. The amount that we've created this cycle,
So many.
it absolutely blew my mind. I was not ready for it at all. And it's kind of strange because it seems like meme coins stole the show. They were like the dumbest idea, with openly not having anything other than a joke backing them, and somehow they're the ones that made all the gains. And I know there's always a handful that do all right, but and yeah, everyone else just sort of thought, oh, well, we'll just look at the tokenomics or whatever it is and buy those, and most of them just got absolutely destroyed. And then I think that in itself led to something I was not expecting to see this cycle at all, and that was record amounts of people quitting over the
Yeah.
past couple of months. I was not ready to see, especially given that obviously in this stage of the cycle, if we haven't topped for Bitcoin and there is more highs left, this is where all of the fireworks happen. And right before that very moment, we saw record amounts of people quitting, and the YouTube views, I'm sure yours were probably the same. Mine dropped by about 50 to 60% from the ultimate peak to the ultimate trough. And it got so bad, I was making live streams begging people not to quit. Yeah, that's how insane it got. And I just wasn't ready to see that. I know that retail get wrecked, that's the story that most lose, and it's just how markets work. But I just totally was not expecting to see so many people quit right before that final leg up, which potentially, even for Bitcoin, if really insane things happen, could be another 2 or 3x from here.
Oh yeah, 100%. I could talk a lot about YouTube. I mean, you're in a unique situation because I think you started your. When did you start your channel? Was it 2022 or
Yeah,
2021?
March 22.
So you're in like one cycle period of YouTube, whereas I started doing regular content in 2019. So my viewership is really depleted because people have already been wrecked before. They've already done that one cycle, and I did live streams daily for a bit. Thought I'll give it a go, and it literally killed my channel. I've only just got it back up to like 7,000 people average now, and that's just because people have discovered that I'm doing regular content. We're doing live streams. It changed it a little bit, but with you, you'll probably notice that you'll peak massively during a bull market because you've already got the viewership. Then maybe in like 2 or 3 years, when we've got a bear market, you'll be thinking, where have people gone? It's like all of a sudden, and then you'll get a comment. And I got this in like when I gave you a shout out, my channel was really flying again because I think previous existing retail returned. And I used to get comments going, oh, I've not watched crypto YouTube for like 2 or 3 years, but I'm back. And people are like, there's so many comments going, I'm back. What have I missed? I'm like, oh, here we go. And then obviously we kind of died after that. And I think I got one video with like 80,000 views, 70,000 views. It's going bananas. Got like 11,000 subscribers in 1 month. It's like, fuck. And then it just went, it's like someone turned off the tap. It's like, oh, it just stopped. And then, I had a rough year last year with like trying to be consistent with everything going on. And then I just kind of stopped a little bit. And then it took a while to get the viewership back. Now we're getting the viewership back. I feel like all of a sudden it's going to be like, oh, when are the normie sort of retail kind of come back? Because I think with obviously how Bitcoin works and the pricing with Satoshis, and then obviously you got if obviously Ethereum has to do really well. Therefore, then if Bitcoin does well, like a 2 or 3x, as you say, potentially, it's going to give that false narrative that, oh, my altcoins are doing okay because Ethereum's back up to 4K. But it doesn't hide the picture that if you held Ethereum for a period of time, you're probably down like 60, 70% in Satoshi value, and therefore your net Bitcoin portfolio worth is down a lot. But this is why I say to people, like, you need to look at those pairs to see what's undervalued, overvalued, or, because most people don't look at that side of it. They just look at the USD. And it's irrelevant because if Bitcoin say 250,000, yeah, of course your altcoins are going to look better if you bought them 2 years ago. But reality is they've probably underperformed anyways because dominance may be still high. So yeah, it's one of those. It's like, I think people really struggle with that. It's quite funny though to watch when people finally get it though. It's like, oh, I finally get it. I've been doing it wrong for years. Yeah, I know. Never mind.
I always thought the real litmus test would be to see how many subscribers totally leave after the cycle. I thought when I started the channel it would sort of gradually build, and then obviously as retail coming towards the top it would go significantly higher than what would be considered organic growth, I guess. But I noticed that some of the really big channels, the ones with 250,000, some of them have got like 500,000, 800K subs, they get viewership in the low tens of thousands per video with
Oh yeah.
800K subs. And it just goes to show that if they've been here so long, that they've had the boom and bust 3 or 4 times now. And it's really brutal because it just goes to show how many people come into this space, hit the subscribe button, and then decide it's not for them, quit, get wrecked, whatever, and leave forever. So yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting to see how many people actually truly quit and never come back. I think I've already seen a lot quit, but I would imagine it's only going to get way, way worse as we move into the next bear market.
I think it'll get better before it gets worse. I think we're going to have that run, but it's like the fitness niche on steroids. It's like it's proper heavy churning, and I've got 73,000 subs, and I mean, and now I'm averaging again 7,000, which is good. But you're right. Like some people's engagement rate of views is like 3%. It's like wow. And like you look at some channels, 1.5 million views, subscribers, sorry, and they're getting like less than 20,000 views. I'm like, oh wow. I mean, Christ. I mean, I think you've got an unbelievable viewership. You've got a decent amount of subs, but your viewership is very, very consistent. You're probably way above average. But like we say, if you get to a point where, but think of it like my first proper cycle when I was doing the bull market. I went from like 500 subs to 73,000, no, 63,000, sorry, in like that 9 month period. It was ridiculous growth, very, very quick. And some months I get 30,000 subs. Certainly in that May, June time of 2021, it was absolutely berserk. And then all of a sudden, the tap turns off and you just stay still for a bit. But I reckon you'll fly. You will fly, but then you'll have that kind of, oh, where's everyone gone? You've all just left me. It's like being left at a party and they turned the lights off and walked out. And it's like, oh, thanks.
Yeah.
But they'll come back. They do come back. It's weird. It's very, very odd.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm kind of looking forward to it. I think it should be not quite as bad, I hope, just because I'm mostly focused on the stock market and Bitcoin and not altcoins. And I think the altcoiners tend to be people that come in thinking that the space is easy and you can just put 20 quid in and make a mill overnight and then leave. So hopefully, because I tend to just focus on Bitcoin hopefully is not going anywhere, and the stock market is certainly not going anywhere, I wouldn't have thought. So hopefully it won't be too bad. But yeah, it's going to be really strange, I think. But we'll get through it, I'm sure.
No, it'll be fine. But you're right. What you're focusing on is a bit more of the loyal subscriber or fan. Like I think with me, if I put Bitcoin in my YouTube channel, I hardly get any views. But I've been focusing on growing your Bitcoin via dominance, via trading your altcoins and being able to like diversify into Bitcoin with gains. But not everyone understands that game. They just, oh, I want to buy and hold forever. Okay, cool, whatever.
Dangerous game with the altcoins, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. Everyone looks at the success stories of Ethereum. What, you weren't here in 2015 to do that, so stop thinking like that. Come on.
Yeah. Do you think Ethereum can make new all-time highs this cycle?
Only because Bitcoin is gonna probably go a bit higher. I think. I don't know. It's a weird one with Ethereum. I think it's gonna bounce, like do like a 30, 40, 50% correction on the BTC pair just because it's like normality going back to the resistance levels. But you can look at any BTC pair of any existing asset over a couple of years, it's just diminishing returns. The highs are getting smaller and it's just gradually bleeding. A lot of people are like, oh, it's going to go to 20,000. I'm like, well, the maths does a math there because like it's got to really smash its all-time high in the BTC pair, and also Bitcoin has to remain pretty high to do it. And people just think like liquidity is just going to fly into things like it's normal, but the Ethereum ETFs, I think, majorly underperformed. It's done awful. It's not even, it didn't even do. It's not even done anything. So I think Solana is the play if people want more speculative gains because it's a really good enabler for the altcoin market, and it's also faster. It's also cheaper to use, easier to use, and it's just Vitalik's a bit of a weirdo, isn't he? Let's be honest. So it's stuff like that puts you off it, but
Man, I don't know. I look at this stuff and I think sometimes I think there's got to be some opportunity there, but for the most part, I really try to stay as disciplined as possible and just stay in my lane. I don't know much about it. I don't really believe in most of them. I certainly don't have the time to research 50 million different coins.
too many. There's far too many.
Yeah, and that's always been a problem for me. I said right from the start of this cycle that the two issues I had, or three, was one there's too many, and I didn't think there was enough liquidity to see broad based alt seasons. I said two, a lot of this is institutionally driven, and I don't think that money's going to rotate out. I think obviously some of it will, but for the most part, I think these sort of entities that are buying the ETF and getting their exposure to Bitcoin, I really don't see them saying, well, we've made a good chunk on that, let's rotate that into Doge or whatever it's going to be. I just never saw that really as a possible outcome. And then the other thing is, I think we've matured enough in this space for most people to realize, or at least most people with the big deep pockets to realize, that the gains in those things are typically made by either elite level traders or insiders, and most people don't fall into those categories. So it's this kind of weird situation where I just don't think we're going to see the necessary inflows. And then, of course, on top of that, I think it's fair to say that a lot of these things overpromised and underdelivered. They claim to be solving a problem that didn't really exist, or they claim to be following a roadmap that never really ended up in the destination it was supposed to. Many of them were like, I'm the new Bitcoin, or this is Bitcoin but faster and cheaper. And people speak with their money, right? They vote with their money and their capital. And people just said, I don't care, I want Bitcoin. So yeah, I don't know. I think we're certainly going to see some spectacular pumps, but I think one of the biggest traps people are going to fall into is picking a top price or a target price that's just way, way, way too high. So if you were to say buy whatever the coin is down here, I think people might easily be up 5, 6, 700% at some point from wherever their low entry is. But I think they're going to be targeting that 20x, and then they're probably going to end up not selling because their eyes are only focused on 20x, and then they're probably going to end up giving back the 5, 6, 7x that they just had there sat in front of them waiting to be sold into.
I agree with it all. I mean, it just reminds me of the old sayings of if you miss Bitcoin, you need to buy this, or the picture of the horse where it's like a really nice picture of a horse, and then it gets to the face and it looks like a 3-year-old drawing it, and like that is literally the roadmap of an ICO and any sort of altcoin launch. And yeah, it's one of those, and like I remember talking about exit plans, and most things in that 2024 pump that we had, it went up to the 382 on the Fibonacci. It literally was the cycle high to the low, and it went up and did a nice correction to resistance. And not many people took money off the table. I did with a couple of things, but I wish I was more aggressive, and I got burnt by that. And I think one problem with me is when I talk about altcoins, I used to talk a lot about altcoins I invested in because I had conviction in my own money. I invested in them. I was very, very happy to do so. But then when your bias changes or you take profit, people go, oh, I don't like you anymore. I'm going to unsubscribe because you no longer follow my project or whatever. It's like, it's such a weird behavior, and it's very, very tribalistic. And it scares me why people think like that in a money market where you're actually investing based off other people's information. It's like you might get the same. Say, for example, Bitcoin goes up to like say 200k, you'd be probably like thinking, oh, what? Take money off the table. And some people may be new to your channel going, I'm happy. I'm going to invest in Bitcoin. It's going to go higher. they just probably won't be able to get their head around the fact that you've been in the game for longer and you've taken money off the table. And taking money off the table is the hardest thing to do, I think, because people just want it to go high. It's like the whole screenshot debacle. If you take a screenshot of your portfolio, you should be taking profit. And we all know it goes sideways once you do that. And yeah, I say the same things, and I get a lot of backlash from it because I say to people like, look, an alt season to me now is where we're gonna outperform Bitcoin over a short period of time. It might be 4 to 5 weeks, it might be a little bit longer, but do not expect face melting gains. Do not expect your coin that you bought in 2019 to randomly wake up because they've all of a sudden got a liquidity. They may well bounce, they may well do like a 3-4x very quickly, but they may not sustain. And I think a lot of people are upset by that because, as you said at the start of this, how many altcoins have been created? Wow. And then you can talk about all the other situation around how much liquidity is in Bitcoin. And then I also think that the hidden thing is we are attached to our Bitcoin. I am. I look at my Bitcoin stack and I'm thinking, that's a lot of money. And then you talk about tax, and I know it's a really, really cop out thing, but capital gains tax in the UK, 28%. That's quite a lot. And I bought in 2016. So some of the stuff I've got is really old. I'm like, I can't touch that. Well, I could, but I'm then betting on the market to go lower than that tax point to then buy back. And I think it's not worth it. I'd rather dollar cost average at the lows and take a little bit off at the top to be sustainable than what I would have done 4 or 5 years ago, which would have been dump half my stack and then rebuy back low. Because I don't think personally we're going to get 80, 90% corrections in Bitcoin ever again. I think that's it. We may well get 50% corrections, 40% corrections, whatever in bear markets, but we've got that layer now that is more mature that may not do things. But you're right. Yeah, you could argue ETFs are cash based, but they're not going to rotate into say the top 20 ETF whenever that comes out. It probably will come out in the next couple of years. I imagine there'll be some sort of basket of ETF cryptos, but I can't imagine them trusting it as much as the Bitcoin one because that will probably be pretty steady. It's interesting to see where we're going to go from here, but I think a lot of people will be disappointed if we're going to go down that route because I think people will still want face melting gains. But then I can just go, well, just go to penny stocks. Go to Camel Finance, it'll sort you out with penny stocks.
Man, I remember when you were publicly taking profits on big altcoin pumps. And yeah, I can remember watching it happen and people just did not like it. They were not happy with you. And they were saying that they were accusing you of weird things and all this kind of thing. And I remember thinking, like, that is absolutely crazy that you've made some gains, you've locked them down, which is our entire job, right? That's all we have to do here is buy low, sell a bit higher up, and then lock down the money. And as soon as you start to demonstrate that that's what you're doing, people, for some reason, are like furious about it. And I know there's some big accounts, I don't want to name anyone, but there's some big accounts at the moment that were posting their bearish perspective and they're just getting cooked. Even people are writing in my comments, which has nothing to do with this account, saying, oh, so-and-so cheated his bags or so-and-so flipped bearish at the wrong time. And I think, like, this is a market. You need to grow up, you know? Like, you're here for business. It's business, not personal. If you make a mistake, then that's fine. We all make mistakes all the time and you're going to continue to make mistakes. You can never be perfect in this game. But yeah, it's super weird. And I just think people that... they don't understand, if you're not experienced, how difficult it is to sell. And you mentioned earlier that, you know, if Bitcoin goes to 200K, a lot of people are not going to be able to sell. But again, for people that got in at the right time, for me, I have to lock that down, right? Yeah. Like if I disrespect my capital like that, I disrespect my family and their well-being. And there's always another pump. There's always something else to buy. And even if over time I end up owning less and less Bitcoin, as long as I'm still making gains, like, what does it really matter?
Exactly.
So yeah, I think but everyone has to learn that the hard way, right? The only reason we can say these things is because I'm sure you've done it as well. I know I certainly have. If you make a life-changing amount of money relative to your net worth at the time, and then you bag hold and you give it all back, and only through doing that do you realize, okay, like, let's not make that mistake again. But it's a much, much, much easier said than done. And
you're right.
Yeah, it's super hard to do it. It's really easy to say, oh, I'm going to buy the low and sell the top, but there's always a reason to hold. And like you say, there's the emotional attachment because there's nothing quite like Bitcoin. It's not like a stock. I don't think people get as attached to a stock. I certainly haven't. But with Bitcoin, there's all these reasons to say, oh, it's cold stored and it's permissionless and peer-to-peer and it's censorship resistant and blah, blah, decentralized. And it sounds really cool and it's going up forever, Laura, which it probably is over time, right? Over time, it probably is going to continue to trend higher, which I think plays to the greed side of our brains more than any other asset class, because you just know if you can sit on your hands long enough, it's probably going to be significantly higher than where it is. But at the same time, if you never sell, then it's never even real, right? It's just like data on a cold wallet.
Exactly.
So yeah, it's a super weird thing, but I think the way I always like to look at it is locking in new levels. So, you know, if you start with a smaller account and you add a 0 to that, then, you know, you've now 10x'd your net worth. Like, it's fine to lock that in and walk away and do nothing for a while until the next opportunity comes. And if you can add a 0 every few years or so, then it doesn't take long before you've completely changed your life and the quality of your family's life. And for me, that's more important than holding this thing and saying, well, I'm never selling, diving hands, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, it is definitely a lot tougher to do than to say it is.
I think you're right. I mean, for me, the days of, as I say, selling a whole chunk of Bitcoin just to live off it, don't need to do it. I've already, over the period of years, I've done it. I've locked down gains. I've bought a new house. Sorry, I've bought everything like I needed to buy. I've got money in other markets. I do a lot of dividend stock investing now. I want to put 20 grand every single year into my ISA and just buy strong UK and some US dividend stocks and just build for a laugh and see what happens and allow the time, because I think over time that will be a pretty interesting play just to watch and see the compound effect, even though it's going to take 10 years. But I'm in the financial markets, and you're right about like people getting pissy, but people also forget this is what we do. We are self-sufficient on our investments. YouTube doesn't pay us. It doesn't pay us an awful lot at all. Um, and the time element of it and the ability to have a nest egg is all through, time. And also, what YouTuber would we be, or content creator, or whatever provider, if we can't do that? We'll be really shit. It's like I can talk a lot about bloody fitness influencers or all kinds of random stuff, and you wouldn't go onto a video of a really, really big, massive, chunky guy eating burgers to get a fitness plan, would you? It's like going to us, if we're getting completely wrecked. And yeah, we all make mistakes. People do make terrible mistakes at certain points, and I've seen it before. But if you can own the mistakes and you're transparent about it, and also be able to recover from it, you're even better. And I remember when I first started, I talk about it as in like what happened to me in my first cycle. I went from $2,000 to like $250,000 in 6 weeks. It's like, oh my god! And I gave a lot of them gains away. I remember losing about 70% of that because I was too bullish. And I was always thinking, like, I think we all remember, like, the consensus of March 2018. We were thinking that's going to save us, it's going to pump our bags. It just didn't, just carried on going down. And then you just got to kind of bail out and try and protect your ass. And yeah, I was still profitable. I was still able to live off it. But that was me starting out as full time at the end of that year. And wow, what a lesson. And I think if I didn't have that lesson, it would be quite a shame, really, because I probably would have done even worse in 2021. So you've got to do it. You've got to make your cock ups. You've got to make your mistakes. But I think a lot of people don't realize they're already making a mistake by doing certain things. Even though you see it in the comments, you're like, "Oh, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? Whoa, 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 hold on a minute." And then you try and tell them, and like, "Oh, I can't give up." Can't help some people.
Yeah, it's super wild. It's super wild. But I think it's funny because if you to ask a normal person before they start investing, what is it you want? They'll say, I want a house, I want a couple cars, probably, and a few other material things. There's only so much material you can buy. But
Yeah.
I think they probably would also say, oh, and what if you ask them what about your investment portfolio? They'd say, well, I want to eventually hold a bit of everything, right? A stack of gold, stack of this, stack of that, dividend stocks, maybe some property or holiday homes, whatever. And then it gets to Bitcoin, and they're just shoving all in, which is fine, and saying,
Yeah.
I'm never going to sell. But it is kind of pointless, I think, if you don't secure the bag and don't buy the house. Do you want to live in your
100%.
mum's basement the entire time, but have like multi-millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin on a cold wallet? That doesn't seem like you're actually achieving much there, besides stacking the Bitcoin, of course. But yeah, I think people are a little I don't think people plan it out enough. I don't think they really think about the whole point of this, which is to try to increase your quality of life.
That's it. Literally nailed it. Like I say to people all the time, if people that come to me about the education side, because I started up with an education company before I did my YouTube channel, and like I always used to say to people, right, if you're wanting to take this seriously, you could in the next couple of years change your life by a very simple margin, even if that is reducing your workly hours to like 10 hours a week. You get more time. Or if you can buy better things for your family because you can trade or because you've been a good investor over a period of years. Like, I don't think people can compute the fact that maybe in this market, 50, 60 to 100 grand can fall on your lap by making one good decision or two good decisions, buying and selling. But people just, I know I've had it. I've had success stories. I've had people like paying off their mortgage at like the age of 28. I'm like, fuck, that's fucking amazing. Well done. And like, but then you got the other people going, I lost 40 grand by just sitting and holding, or I put it into a meme coin, or I sent something through a wrong address or whatever. And it's like, there's two real differences in the market, and it's like it's scary. But you've got to treat it like a business. You've got to treat it like real assets because you're right. People look at Bitcoin, oh, it's just numbers on a screen. I'm not going to sell. What does it mean? Oh, you can't spend it in a shop. Well, you can convert it into cash and you can quite easily do it via many methods now. I know it's a bit harder in the UK nowadays to do certain things, but that hasn't stopped. We can still all do it. There's no dramas in that. And I'm very, very happy with my life. I mean, I look back at what I've done over the last 6, 7 years. It's different, massively different, and if it wouldn't be like that because of Bitcoin. Bitcoin has changed it, and I think people forget that. And I say this to everyone: don't think about tomorrow. Think about like 10 years down the line, because what if Bitcoin continues to just gradually just grow every single year, a little percentage every single time, and outperforming everything, well, give or take, apart from gold at the minute, but you get the idea. It's relatively straightforward, but the reality is people are like, nah, I'm not going to buy that because I'm not going to make enough money. All right then, whatever.
I have this conversation with my brother a lot because he's got, relatively speaking, a nice big Bitcoin stack, but he only got it in the first place because he wanted to buy a house, and now he's pretty much there, and he's saying to me, well, I don't want to buy a house because then I won't have any Bitcoin. And I'm like, well, you can't just live at home with your mum forever, right? You're getting pretty old. Like, you always said it's fine if you want to do that. It's fine if you're in a totally different situation. But the only reason he bought the Bitcoin in the first place is because he wanted to go and buy a house and have no mortgage. And now he's finally pretty much there. And he's saying things like, well, maybe I should just hold for another few years or whatever.
Oh.
And it's I can see both sides of the argument, because maybe if you hold for another 4 or 5 years, then you could keep half your Bitcoin and buy a house, maybe. But I think the problem with this is there's always a chance it goes to zero. It is a non-zero probability. If it was to somehow get hacked, or if we were to have some kind of minor death spiral, I don't even know how feasible that is, but you never really know. And it is just a digital thing, and therefore, any asset can, in theory, go to zero. And I think people, just because the chance seems low, they assume that it can't go to zero. But I mean, imagine just stacking up all this Bitcoin and then something bad were to happen, like a hack or whatever. And then it was all for nothing, when the only reason, like I said, he wanted to do it in the first place was to buy a house. But you mentioned success stories as well. I've got the craziest success story ever. Very early on in the cycle, somebody was following me, and it goes to show, if you're determined and focused, what you can achieve. He had a wife that was dying of cancer, lived in the States, couldn't afford the medical bill. And he followed the MicroStrategy and Bitcoin trades from the lows. And then as soon as he had enough money, he banked it, paid for his wife's cancer treatment.
Wow.
And it just goes to show that, he obviously had a real reason to focus on getting that trade done, rather than being able to sit back and say, well, diamond hands, whatever, blah, always looking for a new narrative. He had a mission and he had to accomplish that mission. And it just goes to show that if you actually were to approach the market with that level of determination and focus, like, I'm going to get in, I'm going to take my money and I'm going to go and improve my life, then I really think that, like you said, large amounts of money can fall into your lap seemingly overnight here. And people are just too willing to not really consider all possible outcomes there.
It's a skill for life at the end of the day. Like, We talk about like the pen and the paper back in years of generations going past of like how creative people made wealth. Now it's the keyboard and the mouse, isn't it? Or your smartphone, where you can be a programmer, you can build something. But more importantly, with us, it's a financial market. You can speculate on a market and have a strategy that quote unquote may work, may not, depending on who you are or what your edge is. But I think everyone's in that trap of I'm working, I'm okay, I'm comfortable, I've got a salary. They're not really going to give it full bells, are they? Whereas in that argument, that is the perfect reason to do it. And if someone had a really, really terrible life or really, really struggling with things and you really focus on something, we all talk about like quotes in like in life about, Walt Disney with if you've got a dream sort of thing. People have to have that kind of carrot on a stick sort of thing where you've got to kind of do it. And for me, my motivation was I didn't want to be in the military anymore. I wanted to do my own thing. I wanted to build my own business. And it kind of just spurred me on to just carry on and do the extra hours, the extra yards, and learn all the stuff. And I got here. But I think people have to want it. And I say it all the time. I think people get too comfortable and they're just not asked and they don't invest in themselves or they don't invest in certain things. But you got to invest in yourself and you got to have a purpose why you want to do it. And if more and more people had that motivation, I think a lot more people would be successful and probably the space would be a lot happier too, because I think it's very toxic because of the shakeouts we have. And I think a lot of people get very, very upset very, very quickly. And it comes very tribalistic, but absolute unbelievable. That's the beautiful thing about the markets. You can make money, and also highlights how mental it is in America for medical bills. To be honest, because obviously we've got our own ways in the UK, but let's not talk about the UK. Christ, oh God,
Yeah. Um, what was I going to say?
shambles.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was going to ask you. I was going to ask your opinion on stock market. Um, what was the first thing you just said? I'm drawing a complete blank here.
I can't remember.
Can't remember either. Yeah. Oh dear. Classic. Oh, I'll think about it in a second. Hang on, it'll come to me. Oh, I don't know. I don't know. If it comes back, I'll mention it. But yeah. Do you have any thoughts on the stock market? Is that something you track very closely?
I wouldn't say closely, but I'm very laid back with certain things of it. I'm looking at the S&P 500 and thinking, wow, that's an impressive pullback back into those range levels of where we literally died. The Russell 2000, something I keep an eye on for the speculative side of it, with the fact that the altcoins tend to move with that a little bit, and not to mention the mining stocks and stuff. But for me, it's all about what the dollar's doing. I think the dollar's fascinating in terms of how that can make the market just flip on a sixpence. And obviously, we've got CPI print incoming today and stuff. And is it today or tomorrow? Whatever day it is, can't remember now. Yeah, and you know, I think people also forget how much we're tied to this market of like the stocks. And like I keep an eye on it. I don't trade it. I just I buy my dividend stocks, which is mainly UK anyways, but I do look at it for like momentum, because I think recently as well, especially Bitcoin has been behaving a little bit like the S&P. I think it's decoupled a little bit recently, but we certainly have like the properties of like why we react to the S&P, the Nasdaq, whatever, because of certain events in the US or the data prints. And like obviously non-farm payroll is quite important for the FX market usually in the past. Now it's more like within the crypto market, there's a bit of volatility, not to mention CPI, FOMC. You can talk about bloody initial jobless claims nowadays. Like, oh my God. Like, and I think I had a comment, and I take the piss out of the guy now, because he always said on my comments, "Oh, what does it matter to me? I'm living in the Cotswold. What does it matter about CPI and stuff?" And I'm like, "Well, it does, because look what happens." And people are like baffled by the fact of it. But I've got a feeling we're going to do another leg higher. I've just got a little feeling it's just going to take off and go to like 6,500 on the S&P and just fool everyone. But when you talk about quantitative tightening and you know, potential rate cuts and the jeopardy of obviously the tariffs and potential wars breaking out. It's like, oh God, it just feels like during the Biden administration, he never said anything about the stock market that really spooked it. But Donald Trump is really loud and proud, and it's creating a little bit of havoc. And I think now it's settled a little bit, but I don't know. It's the biggest guess at the minute, isn't it? With the stock market, I feel like it's primed to do something, but I don't know what. That's my thing with it at the minute.
Yeah, I would love to see the stocks run to new highs because I think that will just create this enormous blow off top across all asset classes, and I think that will really give us this opportunity to make huge gains into the end of the year. But we are also right now at an inflection point because if it is going to be a bear market rally to a lower high, we're kind of right in that neighborhood where we'd expect to see it stall. So
Yeah.
I think it could definitely go either way. My strategy is just to kind of let the cycle low come to me, and then we'll see what happens out of that low, and we'll know for sure after we've seen that low. Because if it fails, then that was indeed a lower high, and if not, then fine, we can stay long for a bit longer. But I also think the Dixie is super weird because
Yeah.
if you were to ask most people, they would say, yeah, Dixie up, and that means Bitcoin down, or the inverse is true. But we've actually been seeing them run together for months now. When the Dixie goes up, Bitcoin's going up with it, which is super, super strange. And we even saw periods of time where the Dixie's running with gold, which is super weird to me as well. So there's a lot of complexity, I think, in the markets.
It's
But
certainly changed since January with Trump coming in, and we can talk about gold and like we struggled for years to get over $2,000, and then it would always get there and just reject, get there, reject. I was like, God's sake! And then all of a sudden now we're at what 3,300 give or take, and the big question might be where does the liquidity from that go if things cool off a little bit and the stability comes back? Is money going to go out of gold into the stock market again? Will that create the fuel to do that? And yeah, we're at that level where you look at any chart on whether it's the Nasdaq, the Russell, the S&P, whatever. You think of that and you think that looks really good for a short right now. You would bet liquidity is going to be there to bet against it. But I just got a feeling it's going to do the opposite. And I see a lot of people talk about it. We're like one really big bit of news away from a big pump. And it feels like that. And I feel like it's been manipulated in a way that the tariffs have kind of made people doubt a lot of things. It's gone low. People probably de-risk and got out of position to prime it to do something. And obviously, Donald Trump's been talking about stupid stuff on his own social media platform to like buy the rally and all that kind of bollocks, which always sounds like a top signal. But, you know, politicians don't lie, do they?
wow. Yeah, he's definitely a new flavor at the moment.
Oh, it's mad. I don't remember this in the last cycle, but then again, I think to myself, I was probably not looking at the S&P as much, and that's probably showing how evolved the market is now in terms of what it was back in his first term. So yeah,
From
it's been really really interesting.
from what I remember, the last time he was president, it was very much like he just came here to slash rates, hold them low, and let the S&P run higher, so that he could kind of stand there and punch his fists in the air and say, "Yeah, we did it. Look at the stock market." And the stock market's not the economy, but I think he kind of pointed at it as if it was, and he was able to say, "Yeah, we keep the rates low, and stock market runs, and happy days on the best president ever." But this time around, it seems like he's not so much interested in that, and he seems more interested in kind of dismantling whatever system is in play at the moment. And he seems like he wants to really push for new changes. And I don't know if he's going to be successful or not. Certainly, these kind of changes usually take a long time, but it's certainly entertaining to watch, at least.
It is at the minute, certainly from the sidelines. I mean, from a UK point of view, I don't quite understand how it's gotten to a point of where it's gotten to in terms of how crazy some of them tariffs were at the start. Obviously, they've been nailed down a lot more now, but I just find it baffling how you can go in and just do that many changes so quickly. It's like, whoa, what the hell? No wonder the market got spooked. And it's like, whoa, okay. Whereas we look at our political bullshit, they rarely do changes very quickly, or they don't want to. And it's like, wow, okay, just chalk and cheese. It really is. And yeah, you want the markets to be, in my opinion, I wouldn't say certain, but you want to be kind of settled on like what's going to happen. And when you create a little bit of doubt, they don't like it. And you can see that across the board. It's like, whoa, okay, that's a bit spooky. But it is what it is. But as I say, Biden very rarely came out and said anything about the stock market much. So it's totally different.
Yeah, totally different. Do you follow the UK politics? Because I don't follow the UK at all.
When I need to, in terms of when elections are around, but I just can't get my head around how bad the UK is at the minute in terms of everything. Like, it seems like we've got no money. It seems like no one's got a clue what's happening, and then you've got other bullshit around tariffs that may well be giving us the wrong end of the deal. But I don't know. I mean, for me, I like to stay out of it because I think too many people are very, very opinionated on it. But I like to keep a little bit of a basis on it when I need to. But at the end of the day, long as the FTSE's doing well, which it has been recently, I'm happy. But it's just one of those. It really did react pretty badly to the tariff news, actually, but it's kind of on a bit of a growth spurt now. But it needed to come back because that was a bit of a brutal one, really.
So I remembered what I was going to say, and yeah, so I don't pay attention to the politics. And funny enough, my wife works part-time as a nurse, and all of her colleagues are very kind of, I don't really like this term, but just for lack of a better way of saying it, they're very wired into the matrix, so to speak. And they've been saying things to her like, "Oh, I bet your husband, the trader, is really furious at Trump," and "Oh, I bet your husband, the trader, is like really annoyed at whatever is going on." And they were apparently completely baffled that her response was, "Oh, he doesn't pay attention to any of that really. He just he only focuses on CPI and interest rates." And yeah, so it's kind of weird how I think a lot of the time they use these politicians as scapegoats. Over here in the UK, I think the biggest problem we have is the wealth divide. There's a handful of people that are doing extremely well for themselves and have never been richer, but I'm from an incredibly poor background. That's what I was going to say earlier. You were talking about your motivations for, or people needing a motivation to change, and if their lives are too comfortable, then they don't have that kind of driver. But if your life is very uncomfortable, for you it sounds like it was being in the military that was really uncomfortable. For me, it was growing up breadline poor, and my entire childhood was spent thinking, no way I'm going to stay this poor forever. So that was my motivation. But because I grew up from that very, very poor background, all of my family and everyone else, everyone around me, I see it all the time. And they really, really struggle to the point where they're non-stop talking about money. They're always like, "Oh, I went to Tesco's and our supermarket prices are through the roof and I can't pay this bill and I can't pay that bill," whatever. I see it all the time, all around me. And it's really hard because I do my best to look after my immediate family, but it's really, the wealth divide is absolutely enormous in this country, and it just coexists all in one time. It's this have and have not economy, which is really strange. And then the tax system, of course, is really messed up here as well. I was going to ask you, actually, you said earlier on the tax is 28% capital gains. Is it 28% or is it 24%?
So yeah, with the tax, I'm not 100% sure now that you've created a little bit of doubt there. Can't remember.
I'm pretty sure it's 20. I know. I'm not trying to. Sorry, I'm not trying to split hairs. It's just 20. If 24% sounds horrible enough, but if it's 28%, I'm going to move to Dubai.
I know it's 18% for the lower band now, which is changed. But it's just one of those things. It's like with capital gains tax, the thing that really annoyed me more than anything was the fact that they got rid of the free allocation. They got rid of
Yeah,
that.
yeah, 12.5K.
12 grand. I'm like, it's not, don't get me wrong, you can't really live off that. But to not pay tax on the first, 12 grand is pretty nice.
Yeah, and if you're married, it's double that, right?
Yeah, and now it's 3. Thanks. 3.
Isn't
What
next
can I do
year
with
going to be
3 grand?
0 as well?
Oh, it's just awful. I mean, and then you got VAT to worry about if you're a business. Then, don't even get me started. So yeah, it's pretty gnarly, really. But the problem we have is in this country, you are right, 100% right. The wealth divide is mental because, like, I remember my military days and I was getting paid 23 grand a year, right? And it's, for some people that's amazing, but we're talking like back in 2013 here. And they used to like button it up and dress it into like, "Oh, you got this thing called X Factor where you're getting all your digs like really cheap and all this kind of bollocks and your meals for free." But you can't go and buy a bloody house and live on it and then live off 23 grand. It's same in the NHS. You probably get all these kind of like low pay bands, but then your training's included and training and all that kind of stuff's included in it. They're button it up amazing, but that means nothing on the dairy aisle of Tesco when you're trying to buy all your stuff, because you've got less money. And it's just pretty horrible. But yeah, you are right, by the way. It is 24% on your capital gains. 18% lower band, I think. Ugh, it's disgusting to look at that.
I've never been so grateful for 4%, to be honest.
Well, that's the thing. But the thing is, I would rather it be a higher percentage, but get a higher freebie, like a higher, like say if they were like, right, £15,000 your tax-free allocation, sweet, and then a little bit higher after that. I wouldn't be bothered by that, because I think you'd probably be able to be managing it much easier. But 24% is a lot when you think about it. And, the wealth divide is just not going to get any closer if they're not allowing people to like gain. And as I say, like, you could talk about income tax, and you could talk about national insurance, VAT, and bloody everything else on top of that, and then your capital gains. And Jesus Christ, then you've got personal allowance tax on interest if you've got cash in the bank. I think, fucking hell. I mean, and then when you die, you get taxed again. Oh, if you've got a pension, oh my God. It's just not fun. And you're right. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm doing okay. But I think to myself, if something went really wrong and like I just had to stop doing this, for example, I've got to really trade my bollocks off to kind of get to a point of living a nice life, because food's getting more expensive, everything else is getting expensive. But I look to people and I think, how do you survive? How do you live like a good life? Because everyone wants the latest iPhone or the latest phone, or they've got all the subscriptions on TV services. Then you've got to get your shopping, then everything else. Thinking, bloody hell, this is going to add up. And the thing is, they're probably not even earning a decent wage. So it makes sense how you see in all these kind of mental health services ramp up, and people are getting very upset with certain things. And it's creating that kind of element of like toxic kind of elements around probably social media, why people are very upset. And then they've got these false narratives of like, I'm going to make it rich with crypto, I'm going to buy Bitcoin and become a millionaire within a week. You can kind of see how it kind of stems from that thing. But again, we could talk about the whole big argument of like why we might not get a massive mental bull market. And a lot of people say to me, well, people don't have the money to do it now. People don't have the money to invest. But then my argument is, well, give them a green candle, they'll probably try and find the money. That's what happened in the previous cycle. When we talk about COVID and all that side of it, with obviously the quantitative easing and stuff and the stimulus, even though people weren't working and they didn't want to work, some people, they were easily investing. They were easily wanting to do something. They found hobbies to do. They built TikToks. They bloody started investing or did something daft. And it's just how the markets move and how people's behaviours change when given an opportunity. But yeah, the UK is buggered. Let's be honest.
I will say one thing. I'm really grateful we don't have to pay for healthcare. That's the one.
Yeah.
That's the one area, because my wife. I think your missus is having a baby soon as well, right?
Yeah.
Mine is due in July, and her best friend has recently married an American, and they charge for the most outrageous things, like placing the baby on the mother. Afterwards. They bill you for that. It's absolutely insane, and they come out tens of thousands of dollars just per baby. So yeah, I'm really grateful we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I'm the same. I mean, my missus, bless her, she had a twisted bowel 2 years ago, and like literally nearly died pretty much, because like she had 3 days of it and they didn't detect it. Had an emergency operation. Then the following year, she had a hernia, like a horrible hernia. It was 9 hernias all the way up her abdominal wall, pretty much. And now she's pregnant, so she's suffering now because the scar adhesions. But God, if we were in America, I'd be working 3 jobs right now, because I wouldn't be able to afford it, because it'd be ridiculous with that amount of surgery so quickly and stuff. And obviously, yeah, pregnancy in itself is a whole world of pain, because the amount of appointments you got to go to and the scans and everything. And we had some private scans as well, like just to kind of top it up a little bit and just to kind of find out stuff early, like obviously gender reveal scans and get a 4D scan. Nice little things, but they bloody add up as well. And very grateful for that. But we could talk about this in 5 years' time. Will we have an NHS in 5 years' time? Will that get changed? I do think we should be charging things for like certain things to kind of help it, because it is a bottomless pit. I mean, there's a lot of things that you could argue for time waiting or missed appointments should be billed for, but I think they've got to think of something to keep it free forever, because I don't think it'll last personally.
Yeah, I think it is heading towards a privatization as well. To be honest, like, me and my wife have spoken extensively about that. It certainly seems to be the way. And one by one, small things are being made private, like certain ear treatments or other things are just one by one becoming privatized. So I wouldn't be surprised if it does trend that way. And then insurance is going to be another bill people probably need, I would think.
I know. On top of pet insurance, you got to get insurance for yourself. Bloody hell! Here we go.
Yeah, the pet insurance thing's wild as well. But you have to have it. You have to have it.
Yeah, because that's expensive. Christ, a limping dog is not a good sign.
No, my dog's all right so far. Happy days. He got in a scrap the other day. Actually, it was pretty funny. But well, it wasn't funny. I say it was funny. It was funny because he's a staffy, and everyone assumes they're really aggressive and stuff. But he got whooped by a Jack Russell cross.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
I've got a Belgian Malinois who's like police dog style dog because I was a police dog handler. And so I got one of them as a domestic dog. I love her to bits, but she's mental. She's so sociable. She'll say hello to everything. And then I've got a sausage dog. They just don't look good together, but they are so funny. Like people just look at us going, oh, wow, there's a sausage dog and a police dog. It's so random. It's funny.
Mobster, do you want to plug anything? I'm conscious. I don't want to take too much of your time. We've been going an hour or hour and 10 roughly. Do you want to plug anything? Do you want to shout anything out? Do you have anything else you want to particularly discuss? Or
Not particularly. I mean, no, I'm happy. I don't need a plug. I think this is a big enough plug as it is, to be honest with you. Just, I'm quite happy. I think we've covered bloody everything, haven't we?
yeah, including the NHS and tax and dog fights.
Oh dear.
Well, I'll put all the links to your stuff in the description and pinned comment, etc., etc.
Yeah, that'd be absolutely spot on. It's been good. I've enjoyed it, to be fair.
Awesome. Well, you're more than welcome back whenever you want. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. No worries.
And best of luck with the baby. Best of luck with the missus. Best of luck for the rest of this cycle. And hopefully we'll speak again soon.
I will do. No worries, mate. Thank you very much.
Okay, take care, mate. All the best. Cheers. Bye.
Bye.